It's hard to find a good publisher though to get it going.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of a cutthroat industry, the book publishing business.
Okay.
You with Clark in '66, you said?
No, I left in, I started flight in '66.
Okay.
I had finished my freshman year. I went there in '65.
Right.
Graduated high school in '64.
All right.
And then went to Clark.
I went there in '65, Brawley Hall. My brother graduated in '65. He left.
What's his name?
He was a biology physics major, and he
Okay.
went on to be a doctor. And I came in and took his place, Clarence Flanigan.
Okay, so you know Porter Sanford and Bobby.
Yeah,
Bobby taught me French.
Yeah.
Bobby
Bobby
taught me
Sanford. Yeah,
French,
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, I was in Brawley, and so small world.
It is. I was in Myrna Hall.
In Myrna. Yeah, my
Yeah.
wife was in Myrna Hall.
Okay.
That's where she was, so I met her.
I hear Clark's got one of the best business and finance
Yes.
undergraduate studies in the country now.
Communications is
Communications, yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TWIG TV, and the reel keep rolling. We had Rudy and Liam here earlier.
Okay.
And I think they stayed with me about an hour.
All right.
They didn't want to go, they just
Knowing
had
Liam,
fun.
I'm sure
yeah,
he did.
Yeah, they had fun, right?
Yes.
So what I would like to do, let us know your name, and what did you do with Delta?
I'm Cal Flanigan, and I was started off in maintenance at Delta in 1968, and went into flight ops in 1976, and spent the last 40 years in flight ops. Well, I'm still working in flight ops. I just started my 57th year with Delta.
Wow.
You know, so.
Yes, sir. That is amazing. Wow. And you, sir?
I was also in flight ops. I was a pilot for 31 years with Delta. Came out of the Air Force and got on with Delta and flew for quite a while.
Okay, okay. And you, ma'am?
My name is Vanilla Cobra. I'm a native Atlantan. I'm a Grady baby.
Okay.
And,
I heard that.
I didn't know
heard
that.
statement
I
before.
was attending Clark Atlanta when it was Clark College.
Yes.
I completed my freshman year, and then I started flying with Delta in 1966. I was the second black flight attendant hired by Delta.
Okay, that was a year before I was
Born.
And you, sir?
I'm Eugene Harmon. I'm a flight attendant. I've been with the flight attendant over 50 years. First of all, I'd like to go ahead and give a shout out to Ms. Deborah DeZajo. She's married now as Deborah DeZajo Simmons. She's was the person that introduced me to Delta, told me to look into in-flight. I got the job, and I've been there ever since. I also like to give credit to my wife for being very patient with me. I'll cut to the chase and tell you just like it is. If you like it or not, I don't care. Number two, I also like to shout out to Casey Grant. She's the young lady that wrote a book about our black history. It's called Stars in the Sky. She makes sure that our history is documented. I'd also like to make a shout out to Lucy Macbeth. She's a congresswoman, Lucy
Oh,
Macbeth.
yeah, I've talked to her. I've
Right.
been with her.
I had an opportunity to talk to her in Congress and stuff like that, to let her know our entire story. She made sure that our situation is documented in the archives in Washington, D.C.
Okay, that's good stuff. Okay. Wow. What was your first job in Delta?
And
Or in
maintenance.
the airline industry?
Well, in maintenance.
In
With Delta,
maintenance.
yeah, 1968.
1968.
Mhm.
What position did you have? What did you do?
I started off as a junior mechanic in aircraft in 1968.
So what part of the plane were you working on then?
All over.
All over.
Avionics was kind of off limits yet. Avionics was a specialty.
Okay.
But everything else, it was just a job assignments that were issued each day.
Okay.
So,
Were there a lot of black folks doing that mechanic stuff?
no, just a handful.
Just a handful.
The
You could count
60s, the 60s was the infancy of, I think, all categories.
Yes,
In-flight, flight ops,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
you know, mechanics, you name it. Unless you were a porter, you know.
Sky cap or
Sky cap or whatever.
Okay.
It was just in its infancy in the 60s.
So was anybody here in the red coats? What did y'all think
We
about
didn't
the
have a red coat in the 60s.
What did we think about them?
Yeah.
They were awesome.
They sure
Those
were.
guys were always very sharp, very
Yes.
put together, and they knew their business.
Yeah,
and
they
they
were-
were very organized and highly professional.
Okay, that's exactly what it
Very
is.
customer interrelated. They're very,
Yeah, they-
like I say, say they're very professional.
Yeah,
They had to be
That's very
courteous at all times.
that's right.
And lots of courtesy.
Even
all
if they were
times.
insulted, they still had to be courteous to it.
Yeah,
We
how
did
hot that
too.
the situation
Yeah.
goes.
We
Yes.
did-
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
mean, you
Been in
Yes.
it and bear with it.
Okay, what was your first job? What the first thing
With
you
Delta, I was hired on flying freighters. Delta flew freight back in those days when I got home.
Okay.
But mostly it was all night flights, so it was kind of strenuous flying from 11 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning up and down the East Coast or up to Chicago and back. So, but then with the airlines, as a pilot, you gradually move up in seniority and you get better flying jobs. So I started off flying freighters at night.
What, the
Freight-
L100s?
L100s.
Okay, yeah, the C-130s.
Yeah.
Okay,
It was
well,
no-
a
I never
retired
knew
pilot.
that.
Okay.
You know, I never did. As long as I'm on you, I never knew you flew the L100, man. You
There
just
you
taught
go.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, the pilots have a strict seniority system, so you can't move up until somebody in front of you moves up or retires. So
Oh, wow.
you just dependent on change in the lineup above you.
What were some of the requirements you needed to accomplish before you even was noticed to look up, but to move up rather?
Well, back in the day, Delta kind of preferred military pilots. They hired a lot of Navy pilots. I was in the Air Force, so
Okay.
I was in a good position to get hired at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. You know, I'm a military veteran as well. I did 28 years in the Army.
Wow.
Okay.
So I understand careers,
Mm.
and I admire folks that can stick to it through
Mm-hmm.
the winds. I call them winds,
Yeah.
and make sure they stay uplifted. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. What was your first job?
At Delta?
Yes, ma'am. Or
I-
hold on, airlines.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. There's an interesting story. When I was a long distance operator
Okay.
when I decided I wanted to change careers. And I was babysitting for a neighbor, and she was one of the first ticket agents, one of the first black female ticket agents
Okay.
hired by Delta. So I asked her, you know, what route did she take to get her interview? And she shared the information with me and got an interview for me. And when I went for my interview, I said I wanted to apply for reservations because I had the experience of talking on a headset and dealing with customer service over the phone
Okay.
after being a long distance operator. But the gentleman who interviewed me asked me, well, why, you said you were bored with the other job, why would you want to come here and do the
Makes
same
sense.
thing?
Right.
And I was like, I never really thought about it like that. I was just thinking about the experience that I could bring. And he said, asked me, had I ever thought about being a flight attendant? Well, at that time it was stewardess.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I don't know exactly, you know, what are their duties, you know, what are their responsibilities.
Mhm.
And he told me, and I said, well, I'm not sure. I've never been on an airplane before. I've never flown. And so he said, well, go home and talk it over with your parents. And I did, and the rest is history. So I was hired after that. And we have to give a shout out to the very first black flight attendant with Delta was Pat Murphy.
Pat Murphy.
Patricia Murphy from
Okay.
Chicago. She was hired in June or July, and then I was hired in September.
Okay, everybody, you know what we do at Constructive Talks? We make sure we do our research.
Mm-hmm.
Look that name up, because our history is very important to the point where if we can participate in information we don't want, analytics on your phone, you know how they feed you stuff based on your browser history. We
Mhm.
can purposely look up things that came from our culture
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your first job?
Flight attendant with Delta Airline. Actually, I'm the first guy that was hired by Delta. They don't want to recognize it because they want to say they hired a brother first.
Well, we recognize
But,
now.
well, that's good. I'm glad you're doing your homework and stepping up to the base. The situation goes that there are several classes that went ahead of me that they hired other people. Another situation which I don't want to bring up negativity, I have
Okay,
to
yeah,
call
yeah.
it like it
It's
is.
always constructive.
A lot of the females, white females, didn't want to be in the class with a black guy, or the parents didn't want to be in the class.
Mhm.
So I went a couple of years or so before they put me in the class,
Wow.
and I went to that point on.
That's
From
ridiculous.
that point on, and I never looked back. I don't want to talk negative. I have to talk positive because I'm a very positive person. I had so much stuff thrown at me one time that I never ever took it home. When my wife and daughter was in Washington, D.C. in Lucy Macbeth's office, I explained to Lucy all the mess that I had to go through. And my daughter was crying when we walked out of our office, and the base manager asked her, said, "Why are you crying? You should be real proud of your daddy." She said, "My daddy never told us that because I never brought it home. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and stuff like that. I never brought the mess home."
You know, you say that, and when I was talking to Rudy and Liam, they said the same thing. When they got off work, it was hard work. Is that something that each one of you did? Make sure that you, when you went home, you decompressed?
Well, you have to be strong too, strong, because you had so much stuff thrown at you, especially Vanilla days and my days and stuff like that. It's unimaginable, unimaginable.
Well, so I write books and I do some other stuff, but one of the things I talk about is don't tell somebody else's story. Meaning, when somebody done something negative to you, don't tell their story, tell your story on how you persevered through it. Because that's the important story, because you got through it. And that will motivate other folks to get through. If they're having some kind of similar thing going on, they say, you know what? This is how he or she said they got through this situation. Because whenever we talk about that, what was done to us, that's somebody else's story of what they did to you, right? And a lot of times people don't look at it like that. But I would say that first jobs, and each one of you stayed with the first job sector that you chose. That's pretty cool.
Actually, in my case, I chose the Air Force.
Well, yeah,
I had dreams of becoming an astronaut because that was the thing.
Okay.
The U.S. Air Force was the space team, sort of.
Okay.
And once I got in, I got sent to Vietnam, and I realized how bad Vietnam was and the things that so many Americans were getting killed over their brothers on the line first. And I said, well, I can't stay in the Air Force and go through this because you have no control over your career. So I left the Air Force and started looking for an airline job. But at that time, the airlines weren't hiring black pilots, so I figured, well, maybe one day I'll be able to get on. And I persevered until another brother filed a lawsuit out in Colorado, which opened the door for black pilots to come in. Because
What year was that?
1968 when he filed the suit,
Okay.
but or 67. But
Marlin Green?
the Tuskegee Airmen, there was 1,000 black pilots qualified after World War II, and the airlines wouldn't hire any of them, so they couldn't get on at all. So not until the 60s.
Were you the only black in your training class?
As a matter of fact, there was 3 of us in our class: myself,
Okay.
Leon Clark, and Charlie Mack.
I was
And that's the only time
black.
Delta ever had 3 blacks, or more than 1 black in a pilot's class, I think.
You
I
tested
was-
the system.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No,
I
this is a
was just
conversation.
going to say that I was the only black
Wow.
flight attendant out of 50 flight attendants. I was the only black in
Wow.
training, same with Pat. We were the only blacks.
So
And
you-
there were only 5 of us for years. They
Wow.
didn't hire any more black flight attendants. And then all of a sudden the floodgates opened.
Okay.
So you guys probably, you ladies were to test, you tested the system. I'm quite sure behind the scenes they were saying, hey, let's see how this goes.
Yeah. I didn't know what kind of strain they were going to until after I'd been with Delta a couple of years. Sometimes I'd call back and say, can you bring a meal up? I knew the black flight attendant back there. She says, we can't come up here, JT. I didn't understand why, but it was just, they had encountered discrimination in earlier encounters with pilots up front, so they were sometimes kept out of the cockpit, and I didn't realize that when I would ask them to come up,
And as we go through things, there's a lot of behind the scenes things that we're not aware of. But it takes that true person to just persevere and keep going. Like each one of you did. You went through these struggles, your ups and downs. You protected your family, like you said. You protected your family from a lot of the stuff that you dealt with. But it takes, each one of you are uniquely a symbol of strength.
Thank you.
Right? And the legacy that you have not only should be seen and heard, but preserved, like we're doing right now. We're preserving this. And whenever we're talking, I would ask you to just always give a message to your great-great-grandchildren. Right? Just give that message to them and how you deliver your messaging. Because they deserve that from you. Because as we know, the information highway, everybody has maybe a 5 to 10 second attention span. So your memory, and that's why I said write your own Bibles, your memory with a couple generations, you know, maybe people not patient enough to listen.
Yeah. I'll put in a plug for a book I wrote 2 years ago. It's about
Yeah.
memoirs of my Air Force career. Well, actually, I went back to childhood and then what I went through in the Air Force and the military. And I've always loved flying. You know, it was like a spiritual release to leave the earth. But I wanted to put it in a book so my grandkids and great-grandkids can see. Yeah, I did. It's Spirituality, Culturism, and the Phantom is the name of the book. And so
And they can
I need
where?
Covenant Publishing in South Carolina, but I need to learn the publishing industry so I can get it marketed a whole lot
I'm
better.
really good at that.
Okay.
So I got you.
Let me get your card before I
Yeah,
leave.
man, I don't like kidneys. So I'm not going to, you're like, huh? Come on, Air Force, I'm armed. Go. I don't just take and gouge.
Okay.
Meaning everything is fair and you get more than what you paid for,
Yeah.
100% of the time. Because I take pride in making sure it's not about money. It's not about that. It's about you and your legacy continuing. That's more important to me. 100% is, right? Because we always say, man, this generation, they don't listen. You know, or this next generation, we always talk about them, but we get say-so in what we give them too. And that's what we're doing right now. Okay, but besides that, now, tell us some of the wonderful times you had, or having, that should be remembered, as in your experience, from your experience with Delta.
Well, I guess I'm one of the fortunate ones. I've really never had but maybe 3 negative experiences in 40 years in the cockpit. I only had 3 captains, they were all captains, that I was just obvious discrimination, and I threatened to walk off the flight deck with all 3 of them, went to the chief pilots. But the rest of my career, I've got to say, is above and beyond anything that I thought I would ever encounter. A little boy from Conyers, Georgia, you know, playing baseball in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. And every day there was an airplane that would go over around noon. Every single day we'd be out there playing ball. And it was DC-6, DC-7 props. And they'd go right over that ball field. They'd stop. Yeah.
I flew those.
Did you?
Come there for
Really?
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
All right.
Same thing.
10 years later, I was looking down at that ball field, flying DC-9s to Augusta. Victor 89. You remember Victor 89, Atlanta to Augusta?
I don't remember that airway, but
Yeah.
I think you're right there.
Yeah, Victor 89, Atlanta to Augusta, and I found out 10 years later when I was flying that was the noon flight from Atlanta to Augusta. And it went up, and I'd look down and see that same ball field.
Wow.
You know,
Amazing.
That felt good.
moments like that you can't buy.
No.
You know, and in the last, I guess, 8 or 10 years of my career, I did probably 8 or 10 inaugurals for Delta. Dubai, I did inaugural to Dubai, inaugural to Johannesburg, Atlanta, Hong Kong, LA to Sydney.
Wow.
I did all of those inaugurals, you know, for Delta
That's great.
Airlines. And
That's a big deal.
never,
That's a big deal, right?
Yes, sir.
Mumbai, JFK, the inaugural. And when you're thrown out there by yourself, high profile flight, everything is hanging on your back. And it's up to you to make it work.
That's right.
You're writing, a lot of time we'd be writing the green pages, you know, the special pages
Oh,
we
yeah.
had, special procedures. I'd be writing the green pages and turning them into pubs when I get back.
Okay, yeah.
We need to do this, and we should be doing this. You know, it's not safe. You know,
So he had to create sort of an operating manual for future
Yeah.
flights.
That's the green page.
Yeah.
Procedure to follow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Air Force. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, Army, I'm like,
Yeah,
I know that's pertaining to some doctrine.
I still go by checklist today, you know, from my personal life. Get up in the morning, check out 2
Yeah.
glasses of water, whatever.
Ma'am,
Yes.
tell us about some wonderful times you had, or a wonderful time that just sticks out in your experience.
One of the first memories is when I went to Memphis, Tennessee. I was based there for about 6 months. And there was no integrated housing at the time. So one of the instructors at the training center contacted some people in Memphis, and they found an Episcopalian priest affiliated with some church up there, and Benjamin Hooks.
Oh,
Also,
Ben
you
Hooks,
guys
yeah.
remember
I
Benjamin
remember the
Hooks?
name, yeah.
Remember him very
He
well.
was president of the NAACP at the time. He and his wife Frances lived there. And so they found this wonderful family that adopted me. And I lived with them because their oldest child, daughter, was away in college. And they just took me under their wing, gave me her room.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like I was
Okay.
a part of the family.
Yeah.
And the husband, his name was Johnny Arnold. He was one of the first blacks with Anheuser-Busch at the
Okay.
time. And so I met some wonderful people up there. I met some great celebrities. I had some great layovers. And one of the things that I really felt great about was maintaining the average in training.
Okay.
You had to maintain a 90 average.
Oh, so
And
those
I
are
was
like
like-
follow-on tests you have to take, evaluations. How often
Yes,
did you have
the
to do
tra-
those?
Training was 4 weeks, 4 to 5,
Did you take the
6
test
weeks.
weekly or
For-
something like
How
that?
many
Almost
times?
every
Yes, we had to, yes, we
Whoa,
tested
whoa,
weekly.
whoa, hold up now.
Yes.
You had to maintain a 90 weekly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
My God, okay. All right, no pass fail, huh?
Exactly. And so, I mean, that was a little bit of pressure being the only
I'm
black
sure it was.
in the
That's
class.
sure it was.
I was like, I cannot
Mhm.
fail. I cannot afford not to make it, happen. And so I was very proud that
That's
I
good.
was able to do that. And over the years, I got a high number of what they call good letters.
Okay.
Where
Recommendations or
passengers-
good letters?
Yes,
letters.
people would
Oh,
compliment
okay.
you, your service on the flight, and it would go to your supervisor, and it would become a part of your record.
Well, you know what? That's important still today. To like when you get a receipt and they did good customer service, they
Yeah.
don't do it with letters, but it's that digital.
Yeah.
People always want an online review and,
Yeah.
make sure you go online and give us a good review.
Exactly.
Didn't you all have like a jet recurring and profit?
Yeah, we still got that now.
You do?
We had to
Yeah,
do
we still have it now,
that
every year.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
every
didn't-
year,
I
still
thought
gotta do
this
it.
was
Yeah,
all
that's
prop. I thought the
Yep.
props were gone, it was all jet.
No, we still every year.
What is
same
the
thing.
difference in it? I mean, what do you have to do every year?
Make sure that you know how to operate the doors, everything like that,
Emergency
emergencies,
How to evacuate.
scenarios, everything.
Where all the life rafts
Possible
are.
to go wrong,
Okay.
and see how well you can handle it and stuff like that.
Well, how difficult, all right, you're starting, 50 years, you started off at the end of the props, and the DC-8 was the queen of the fleet, DC-9, 7.2s and
Yeah, I
all that.
remember all those.
But now, all of these Airbuses, all these different airplanes with all these doors, how do you keep up with all of those doors?
Steady,
Steady?
stay ahead of the curve, that's all. When you
Okay.
go back to jet recurrent, you don't want to fail or whatever like that, you just have to stay on top of things
Okay,
and double check yourself sometime if you're in doubt, double check,
okay.
that's it.
You know, one of the questions I asked Rudy and Lynn was, and private customer service has this perk, the red coats had this perk. Like, I said, how much time after work did you invest into being good at what you did during work? And you sit here and said, you got to study after work to make that 90 weekly. You got to study those airlines,
Yes,
those planes.
absolutely.
Right? Unless you study in flight, or you studying on your break, or you studying if you're not flying, in between.
Mhm.
You got to spend some of those hours afterwards to make sure you maintain that standard,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now, it's your turn, sir. What
Go
is
ahead,
one of
shoot.
the amazing times that you've had in your service with Delta?
Okay, let's back up a little bit on that. Let me tell you some things, and I'm going to tell you some of the nice things.
Perfect, perfect.
For a good example, I was told in my face, if two planes left the ground at the same time, they're going to make sure my ass is on both of them. That's the kind of talk they had to talk to me about. Leave that alone. Don't even try to think about it, buddy. Okay.
Whoa,
Another
okay, I
thing,
got it.
another
I just
thing,
got
no,
it.
let it go.
Okay.
Another thing was the station man, we have station managers at all those stations. You remember the station
I remember
managers?
them
up?
well. Yes.
They were so mean and ugly to me that one of the guys was on this deathbed I was telling Panola.
Mhm.
They had tons of people to find out the location where I was because he wanted to ask for forgiveness the way I was treated.
Oh.
When they finally caught up with me
Sure,
about
redemption, yeah.
several weeks later,
Uh-huh.
and you know what I told him?
I can
Right.
imagine.
I'll think about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll think about it.
Like, wait for it.
Yeah, I'll think about it, But anyway, let's go to the good part.
No. So let me say something right
yeah,
before
go
you
ahead.
start the good
Go
part,
ahead.
man.
Scare me.
Because you got to have both, right? In order to know good,
Mhm.
you have to have experience bad. Because it's a comparative thing, especially as you go through. You get on that other end and say, man, this is good. I'm being treated good in this
I'm
city.
a correction you on that before you
Okay,
get too
go
deep
ahead.
off the edge and stuff like that. Yourself
For
have to
your
be,
situation.
everybody.
Okay.
You have to be positive.
Okay.
Don't take the negative, which don't carry it down. And don't take it with me. And don't.
Yeah, and
Be
that's
positive.
exactly
That's
what I'm
it.
saying.
Yeah.
But you have to experience
you're going
one and know
you're going the
other.
long route.
Yeah, you have to experience one to know that, because I'm messaging.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Right? You have to know one
Yeah.
to experience the other, the differences.
But
So
nobody,
now we're gonna go
nobody
through-
going to hold your hand. So that was
That's
up
right.
to you.
100%.
That's it. You have to stay positive and stay on the upper curve to know what's going on. I'm always ready for the negative at all times, even when I'm asleep. What
Yeah.
else you got to do it?
Your career field, they have to be not expecting, but they have to know that
Anticipate.
something could happen to
Yeah.
them that they couldn't get trained for anywhere.
And-
Just
yeah.
all of a sudden something negative happens, you got to deal with it
And
on the spot.
split up the
Whereas
system.
with us, we knew what negative stuff to expect at our job, and every 6
Right.
months we had to take a proficiency check to make sure we could handle like an engine failure on takeoff or something like that, or fire. We knew what negative things we had to deal with before we got in the airplane, whereas they did.
Yeah, it was just all of a sudden.
That's right.
Yeah, and I totally get that. It's all of a sudden, being military, man,
You
prepared for the
train for
unknown
it, yeah.
is real. And part of it is, I say this, but first what we're gonna do is, what's some of that good stuff? Give us some of that good stuff, man. I know you got tons of good stuff to share.
Can't talk
Well,
about it.
maybe yes and no, but because I stayed much, I gotta make it clear that I always was very positive. I didn't dwell on nothing.
Okay?
So I took the good stuff with me within myself, period.
Okay?
You see? Then I always, as a brother, I always have to stay positive, stay up front, stay professional at all times. That's
is
it.
a must.
That's it.
Okay, it's your turn. Something about Air Force. Right? Transitioning, it's usually a gap in there, right? It's like, man, I don't know. Like, what do I expect? What
Well,
are some good things you experienced?
I think a lot of unusual things you see in the air that most people in the plane don't get to see. The flight attendants can't look out and do any sightseeing. I think I was always fascinated on a nighttime takeoff, and when the moon would come up, pitch black, the moon would be red when it came up, because of the Earth's atmosphere, deflection of the light rays, and then it would turn orange and gold. That was always, a spiritual thing to me, and so I always thought of, since I was a kid, that flying is a spiritual experience. So I just enjoyed being up there, and
Okay.
but there were things on the ground that different layovers were interesting, like Cairo or places like that, or went to Tokyo a lot. Paris was a good place to go to.
Yes,
You get to see other cultures, the way they live their lives, what they felt was important in their lives, and just for a brief, couple hours, you could
May I ask
absorb
a
that.
question?
Yeah, you can, anything.
Okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I am a very spiritual person myself. So I would like to see if you could elaborate on the experience, the spirituality part of what you're speaking about, like seeing the
Well,
moon time.
mhm. And this is getting away from the positive, but there's been at least 4 occasions when I thought I was going to die in an airplane, and
Okay.
just by the grace of God that I was saved. One was in Vietnam, diving near a mountain underneath the clouds, and a couple of them were with Delta, which I kind of hate to go back and recount it, but there's been several crashes where planes got caught in a thunderstorm being forced down to the ground and they couldn't recover. It was just too powerful a storm. That happened to me once on a 757, and I thought, I don't know why, I was a co-pilot then, I don't know why the captain wanted to go that way, but we were flying right through a storm on final approach about 2 miles from the runway, and all of a sudden we started sinking. Pull up, pull up, pull up. We couldn't, full power, and we couldn't stop it. And we just hit it for the ground, and then all of a sudden we just broke out at the end of the storm, and about a half mile from the runway, and banged it on. But I think it was by the grace of God. Things like that.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of other times that just staying alive, and sometimes. But so that prompted me to write the book too, because I wanted to believe that I was, sometimes you're blessed and you have to believe that you'll be
That's
blessed.
right. That's right.
Correct.
JT, excuse me, can you, back you up on that. I can remember one time I was on I think it was a 727 or DC-9, and we zoom along, everything fine,
In
and we
cruise
completely
flight.
flipped over and went straight down to
No
the ground.
kidding.
And everybody said, well, I guess it's all over.
What was that? Was that cruise flight?
Yeah, we were close, and we just
Wow.
all of a sudden just
Clear air turbulence.
flip over and went straight down, nose down. You remember that plane? I think it was Eastern. Somebody crashed in the swamps in Florida.
Yeah, it was a 1011.
We
Eastern
were-
have that
We
time.
were maybe a month after that,
402.
and just before we went, we
Wow. Did the
kind
captain
of saw the ground. We pull out.
did the captain explain what happened?
No,
during the
no,
flight?
they were scared as hell.
What did you
But-
call it? You said clear something? Air?
Clear air turbulence.
Clear air
Sometimes you're
turbulence.
flying, it's just a clear blue, beautiful sky up in front of you, and all of a sudden, boom, just the airplane goes up and down, and
Yeah.
dang, it's just people get injured, and you don't expect it. But that's the way it is sometimes.
And Vietnam, how long were you there?
A year.
A year. Did a tour duty a
Mhm.
year.
Yeah, I was in the Air Force, but I was assigned to the Army, so I was a scout plane flying on top of the jungle,
Oh, yeah.
marking targets for the fighters to come in and support the infantry down there. So.
Man, so that's like a scout. You advance
Yeah.
party, and
Yeah.
they see you. It's all action.
When I first got there, I'd be diving down to see the target, and all of a sudden I see things going by the windshield. I said, wow, there's a lot of insects over here, big bugs. And it was
What you're saying
AK-47
is every fifth
bullets.
round.
Bullets.
One round, one tracer and 5 rounds.
Right.
And one of the negative things that I experienced back in the 60s, I used to love San Francisco. That was my favorite
Mm.
layover.
So Memphis was defined like, woo, now San Francisco was.
Oh, yeah, yes, it was tops. But we would bring back so many coffins.
Mm.
We would,
Oh,
when
that's
we were
true.
on the ground.
Military.
That's right, yeah,
Yes.
that-
Oh
I've
my
forgotten
God,
about
during
that,
the
yeah.
Vietnam era.
Yeah.
And we'd be sitting in the back of the plane, waiting for cabin service to clean the plane, to turn us around.
And
go
look
back
out the
to
window and
Atlanta.
see these coffins
See,
up there.
no luggage,
Yeah,
just
it's
coffin.
coffins, that's
Coffin
true.
after coffin after
Yeah.
coffin. That was hard.
I
Yeah,
remember
that
that.
definitely sucks. And I would say that, I spent a lot of time in combat as well, and just not knowing.
Were you in
you're gonna have
Afghanistan?
that next second.
Were you in
I
Afghanistan?
didn't go to
Or?
Afghanistan.
Mm.
I was in Iraq more
Oh, okay.
than anywhere else.
Okay.
We used to fly charters to Iraq, or?
No, I never did.
Okay.
No.
Well, you need to go back and do that. Go back and.
Yeah.
Need more than that reason to go back.
Hey, let's do one more thing.
Fly to a war zone,
I
yeah.
don't know if this is still rolling, but I have to get back.
Okay, yeah, that's what, so what I'm
Okay.
gonna do, I
Yeah.
was just about to ask now, let's
Okay.
close
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's close, and any message that you have for the folks out there, please.
Me first.
Yes, you first, sir.
Okay. First of all, give grace and honor to God, and be positive about yourself and positive around the people that surround you, and just be blessed. That's it.
Ma'am?
Ditto for me. He said everything that I was thinking.
Okay.
First, giving honor to God, because, if it wasn't for him, none of us would be here. And I've thought about what JC was saying, but, you had that book in you. So he saved you so you could write that book. And all of us could be a part of what we're doing right now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I always tell my kids to treat people with respect, because that's the way you should be expected to be treated. And one of the first verses we learned as children was God is love, and that was the main thing our parents taught us, So if you act with love towards people, then you kind of lift them up and make them think higher of themselves, I think.
Courage.
Yes, sir.
One of the big lessons I've always tried to teach my kids and my grandkids now is that they said, "Granddad, you were the first to do this. You were the first." And I said, "Whoa, stop. First means you were the first, but don't leave the position or conduct yourself in a way where they say, well, you were the first and you're going to be the last. You weren't dependable. You didn't have a good work ethic. Et cetera, et cetera." So, as though some of the saying there, pay it forward, pay it forward, be that person. If you are the first one, my goal was always at Delta, the first chief pilot, first this, first that, was to make sure that when I left that job, the next time somebody that looked like me interviewed, they wouldn't have anything negative. Well, you remember when he was here, he wasn't dependable. He laid out all the time. He didn't do it,
Yeah.
Don't be that person.
Yeah.
That's always been my work ethic, you know.
Well, I thank each one of you for your time. I know you got things to do,
Okay.
and I appreciate you.
Okay.
Everybody, thank you for joining TWIG TV and this amazing
All right.
interview. Y'all
All right.
take it easy.
Thank
All
you
right.
very
Thank
much.
You guys do well.